Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. A lot of people are on vacation, I suspect.
I'm on vacation, but I'm here.
Yeah. And people up in the Northeast are looking to move to Florida to get away from the heat. It's going to be 95 up here again today. It was 102 or something, 100. It felt like 108.
Not far off from what we're down here.
Yeah.
Only that up here, not everyone has air conditioning. Oof.
Okay, it is 8:57. We will begin in 3 minutes.
Is everyone enjoying soccer?
Very much.
Following the...
Boy, got some big matches today and tomorrow.
Yeah.
The rivalry, England and Argentina, and Spain will be a great game too against France.
Yeah.
Thought the U.S. was way overrated from the beginning. They really got exposed quickly against Belgium.
Yeah, but they played well. I think altogether really good soccer. What I'm missing is where people think of something different. A player just running with the ball instead of, playing with the team, or, a backward volley, or there's very little of that. And what I totally don't like is the referees relying on the slow motion. If they are not sure and they go back and see the slow motion videotape, I think they have made very poor decisions looking at those tapes.
You always want to get it right.
That's true, but I don't think they get it right with that technology.
Okay.
Well, we know Marguerite has a future in the color commentary for the World Cup.
Yeah.
No, but I actually, my first visit to the United States was 1982 with my lady soccer team. We played tournaments in California and Arizona. But anyway.
Marguerite, in 1 minute, we have to break for a commercial.
Oh, absolutely. Oh.
Have I joined a podcast here, or?
Yes, you joined the Good morning, Jay. It's
Hi
9
there.
o'clock. Good morning. It's 9 o'clock. I welcome everyone to the July 14th meeting of the Captiva Community Panel. The first thing is roll call. Marguerite Tia Merville.
I'm here.
David Mintz is here. John Rosen.
Here.
Mike Bennett.
Here.
Ken Suarez.
Here.
Sandy Stillwell Youngquist. She's here. Jay Brown.
Here.
Linda Laird.
Here.
John Wade.
Here.
And Tony Lappy, who's the chair of one of our committees, is here. And I see Jeff Paul, and Bob Randau, who is supposed to be on vacation, is here. So I didn't expect him to be here, but welcome, Bob. We clearly have an agenda, a quorum, and we shall begin with the approval of the minutes of the June 9th, 2026 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Minutes are passed. 2 changes on the agenda. One is there will be no report today regarding CEPD. As far as I understand, I was told that unless John Wade wants to add something, my understanding is there's no report. And also we added an agenda item at the end. Green Flash has filed an application for a marina on the water side of their property, and I just want the community to be aware of that. I was made aware of it, and we'll talk about that at the end of the meeting. Okay, first thing on the agenda is Lee County Sheriff's Office update, and I see Sergeant Adam Whitten is with us. So, Sergeant, take it away.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. Sergeant Adam Wint with Lee County Sheriff's Office. Everybody hopefully had a good July 4th. We had a good July 4th out here. It seemed like Friday was our busy day, and then Saturday and Sunday, I think the rain kind of kept people at bay. Starting off with our stats for the month. David, I broke down this month our proactive versus reactive calls to kind of give you a little insight. It was pleasing to me last month that you said you were surprised by the number of calls because I give you these numbers. Like I said, it's hard to kind of paint a trend necessarily with them, but it does show you guys how active the deputies out here are, and a lot of times they're doing things that you guys don't necessarily see. So, try to use this opportunity to show you how busy they are and how much value you're hopefully getting out of the program. So this month we had 465 calls for service. The month of July. Of those, 325 were proactive, which represents about 70% of the calls for service are proactive. Those are going to be things like area checks, traffic stops, ordinance violations, parking violations, things of that nature. And then 140 calls for service were reactive, which represents about 30% of our call volume. That's, everything you could imagine. But primarily we're seeing disturbances, suspicious persons calls, a lot of 911 hangups, medical emergencies, and boating emergencies kind of represent the largest number of our reactive calls for service. The month of July, we had 2 arrests. One was related to a BUI crash that occurred in one of our local marinas, and the second was a golf cart theft, which occurred on North Captiva. So that didn't affect the Captiva community here. Happy to report we had 0 reportable crashes this month, and then we issued a cumulative total of 46 citations and warnings. I will say we saw a notable decrease in speeding this month. I don't know if that's just a trend from, there being fewer people here, or hopefully that's a result of the enforcement that we're doing. But either way, there'd be days we'd go out and do traffic enforcement and encounter very little speeding. So we're happy to see that, and we just ask the community to keep that up. Definitely a good trend to see. Bringing up hurricanes, obviously, hopefully we don't have any hurricanes this year. However, there are a couple things to mention leading up to any sort of hurricane activity. First, please make sure you have an evacuation plan set up. I know a lot of people are out of town right now, but especially our businesses that have renters. If hurricanes are approaching, please keep in mind any sort of local evacuation orders, and please respect and follow those. It's not a safe place to be out here, obviously, during a hurricane. And then along that same note, please have your reentry passes. If you have any questions about those, you can get with the city of Sanibel. And then something that Deputy Lusk brought up that he's seen in the past that he wanted me to remind everybody of is following a hurricane, if there is one, a lot of times everyone is, very, excited to get back out here and either have their property inspected or have restoration recovery efforts get going right away. And so what's happened in years past is people have hired contractors, whoever. Obviously, these events usually bring in a lot of outside people. And so we will encounter out here on the island workers on a property or just people on a property that are supposedly doing recovery work or inspections or things of that nature, but they don't have any sort of proof from the property owner why they're there. This might just be somebody gets in touch with a friend and says, hey, can you go out and check on my property? And then we encounter that person on your property and we know that they're not someone that's usually out there and they say they're there for good reasons, but we can't confirm that. So if you send somebody out to work on your property following a storm, please make sure they have some sort of proof that you've hired them and they're meant to be there. Remember, a lot of times cell phones aren't working, so we can't necessarily get in touch with you. So, we don't want to delay anybody's recovery efforts, but we're obviously very proactive during hurricanes at protecting your property. So please help us with that mission. And if you do send somebody out to your property to inspect it or start doing any work, please make sure they have proof that they're working for you. Also, we kind of usually mention issues with golf carts and low-speed vehicles. This month is no different. When it comes to the low-speed vehicle, something the deputies are seeing this month is a lack of car seats in use. Remember, a low-speed vehicle, a registered golf cart, is a motor vehicle in the state of Florida, so all the same rules and regulations apply, especially pertaining to children being in child seats. And then we have seen some open container issues with golf carts and low-speed vehicles. Once again, if it's being operated on the roadway, or if it's being operated at all, even on private property, it's illegal to have an open container in a vehicle. Also, something that's come up, I'll give you more of a report on this next month because I'm still confirming some of the legalities, but we've seen a couple times recently side-by-sides or UTVs being operated on the roadway. Obviously, off-highway vehicles cannot legally be operated on the roadways in Florida. Something that we've seen, and that this is the part that I'm researching, is there's a couple companies where you can get a registration for your off-highway vehicle, for your UTV or your ATV, through the state of Montana. So what they do is You buy a side by side like the one that the sheriff's office drives around, and this company will create an LLC for you in Montana and then register that vehicle in Montana under that LLC and then send you a Montana tag. Because just the way the rules work out there, I guess it's a lot more lax with the motor vehicle registration. So then people will put this tag on their off-highway vehicle and drive it around the roadways in Florida thinking that it's legal because it has a tag on it. Based on everything I've researched so far, that is not legal. It's still an off-highway vehicle in the state of Florida. You can't drive them around. If that issue got out of hand, we'd have 1,000 side-by-sides driving around the roads in Captiva, and I don't think that's probably what the community wants. So I'm just putting the information out there. I have a call out to our legal department to do a little bit more research and just make sure I'm not missing anything. But at least before that issue took off, I wanted to make sure you guys were aware of it and that I mentioned something about it. And I'll provide an update next month once that information's all been confirmed by our lawyers. And then lastly, I wanted to make a recommendation for the panel to at least consider something related to pedestrian safety. Something that I've seen since I've been out here, both on duty and off duty myself, walking or running, things of that nature, is and I'm sure you guys have seen it too, along the S curves. It's very difficult to maintain a barrier between the vehicles and the pedestrians or bicycles that might be trying to traverse that curve. It's a super narrow roadway. We actually had a crash last week related to somebody who failed to maintain that lane and struck some rocks and stuff on the side of the road. So the panel might want to consider getting with the county and putting up some sort of a physical deterrent for people to leave that lane, whether it's rumble strips or those little reflectors that if you are leaving your lane, you start to get that thumping sound in your car. It might be good to have something as you go around those S curves that kind of forces people to stay in their lane a little bit more. I had initially thought maybe those vertical posts, that get knocked down and they come back up, but I think trucks are just going to tear those up too quick if you end up doing something like that. But it might be worth considering putting something up to try to help alleviate the issue with vehicles and pedestrians being within inches of each other. The two areas are obviously the two S curves, but then even the turn around the Rauschenberg property could probably use a little bit of some sort of physical deterrent. So might be something worth considering. That's all I have for this month. If anybody has any questions, comments, or concerns, I'd be happy to chime in.
Does anybody have any questions for Sergeant Whitten? John?
Sergeant, thank you for the report. Could you clarify what you indicated when someone's working on your property and you may not be here? We have people all the time that come and go doing various projects around our house, and we may not be here. What are you referring to? What type of protocol would you need or what you're suggesting?
So this is primarily related to hurricanes. So the
Okay.
good thing about the resident deputy program out here is we know 99.9% of the workers as we do the residents, and we have a good gauge on who should be where. So, when we see somebody on a property that we don't think should be there, we can reach out to you and get in touch with you. The issue becomes during hurricanes, there's a flood of workers and random people out here, and we have no means of getting in touch with the property owners because there's no cell phone service. And so I guess what they've seen in the past is say we pull onto your property and there's a guy from Illinois there who says he's inspecting your property and that you've hired him. We don't have any sort of way to confirm that. All we have is an out-of-state guy poking around somebody's property. And, we say, hey, can you provide some sort of proof that you're supposed to be out here? And they say, oh, I just got a call and said, come out here and check on it. And that presents an issue for us because if they are legitimately out there, we don't want to interrupt that recovery work that they're doing, but also we want to protect your property. So if I'm just talking about hurricanes, I'm not talking about day to day. If there's a hurricane and you hire someone to come out to your property, the request would be that you provide them with some sort of proof or that they bring along some sort of proof that they're meant to be there.
That could just be
Hopefully
a
we won't
letter
have to.
saying hired him.
What was that?
Could that just be a letter saying we've hired them?
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Just something, to give some sort of credence to what they're telling us. Cause, we're going to roll up and like I said, see an out of state person poking around a property and they say, oh no, I was meant to be here. If they could have some sort of proof, I guess Deputy Lusk has said in the past, sometimes this is done through an intermediary. Maybe you hired a property management company and then the property management company hired somebody. And so the person out there doesn't even know the name of the property owner, which presents a concern for us, obviously. So yeah, just something to help us prove this person's meant to be here.
Well, this won't be an issue this year. I'm very confident. So thank you for the information.
Perfect.
Any other questions from the panel for Sergeant Whitten? Any questions, Ken, from the community?
No.
Okay. Sergeant, thank you very much. Thank you for all the work you're doing and for the update. And we do know the value that you add to the community.
Thank you.
The numbers aren't necessary, but they're helpful.
Sure. I appreciate that.
Okay. Next is Chief Jeff Powell, our fire chief.
Yep. Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Adam, for being the bearer of bad news and bringing up hurricanes. So you saved me from having to do that. You can be the bad guy today. So, yeah, I agree with everything Adam said as far as hurricanes and golf cart safety goes. Yeah, so as he said, July was a fairly busy month for us out here. A lot of tourists walking around. So just a few highlights of the calls the guys responded to. We had a large house fire on Sanibel. We had a dumpster fire out here. We had a vehicle fire, which was a septic truck that caught on fire. Handful of vehicle accidents, as he mentioned, the boat accident in Bayside, and then an electrical fire at the Bubble Room. So 4th of July was a good day as far as incidents went. Just had a few, like I said, a few small fires related to fireworks and whatnot. So overall, it was a busy month for the guys. So um, that was good. And then the other thing I wanted to do, I wanted to thank the owners and the contractors for 15177 and 15879 Captiva Drive. I'm sure you guys noticed both of those owners donated those houses to us to do some training over the last month or so as they're prior to tearing those houses down. So that was super beneficial for our department and our guys, and we were able to invite Sanibel up for some of it and do some multi-company training with them. So just so happened we did a large training in the morning, and that same scenario almost to a T presented itself on the fire in Sanibel in the afternoon. So it was somewhat of a practice run in the morning and then do it all over again in the afternoon for real. So so th those types of things are great training for our guys on these properties that they're not used to doing and buildings not used to being in when it comes to these things. So can't thank those two property owners enough for that. Um, that is all I have for today. Like I said, I'm not going to harp on hurricane season. Adam did it for me. So I'm here if you have any questions.
Jeff, could
Chief, the house that burned down was the Burnset house. Uh,
I cannot confirm who the owner was because that's a Sanibel property, so we don't do the investigation. They do, but
okay.
that was what I
House
read
was
on
Laurel Burnset's house, and her son Joey Burnset's family lives in the house with her. He's a very well-known fishing guide on Captiva,
Mhm.
and it's been in the paper that they've started, or friends of theirs have started a GoFundMe page to try to help that family get back on track.
I,
But
I I also did, yeah, I did read that. Like I said, I can't confirm that. Maybe Tiffany can from the paper. I think it was in her paper.
well, I can, Jeff.
Oh, okay. All
So,
right, then yeah. Okay.
um, so I would encourage everybody to consider the possibility of helping the Burnsetts out. I've known that family for years and years, and they it's true they live on Sanibel, but they are fixtures on Captiva more so than even Sanibel.
Yeah, it was pretty unfortunate. The call came in as it was reported as a possible brush fire because nobody was home when it happened. So and then got there and found out it wasn't. But yeah, it was a pretty unfortunate situation for sure.
Yeah, my understanding is that, well, Laurel, everybody knows, works with Royal Shell and has been very instrumental in helping people rent their homes for those who are renters. And my understanding is that she had just finished some renovation, post-hurricane renovation, when the fire struck.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I hope people can help her out, and Joey and his family.
Jeff, could you give us an update on the helicopter negotiation pad zone that you guys were talked about at the last panel meeting?
Yeah, I don't have a huge update. It's just kind of pending right now, but I did speak with another private property owner that has some potential space down in that same area that we may be able to utilize as a landing zone, whether that be temporary or semi-permanent. So um, I don't really have an update. It's still in the same position it was the last meeting, David.
Okay.
Yeah. No, no, no change. Yeah, no change from last meeting.
Jeff, you require about a 2 acre site, is that correct, for a helicopter landing?
So their minimum clearance is 100 by 100, is kind of like their minimum ground clearance on it. But then there's a lot of kind of caveats that go with the surrounding vegetation and power lines and proximity to homes and stuff. So it's hard to just say we need specifically 2 acres. The company that runs the helicopters is uh, somewhat particular on where they land sometimes. So generally, what we do is we kind of bring them out here and say, hey, which is what I did a couple months ago, and brought the lead pilot out and was like, hey, can you help me identify spots that you feel would be appropriate, and or what could we do to make other sites? So, but yeah, generally, like I said, 100 by 100 is their absolute minimum of where they'll fly into.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the panel for Jeff? From the community, Ken?
No.
Okay. Next thing on the agenda is
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Somebody say something?
Oh, I just said thank you. That's all.
Oh, you're very welcome. Okay. Next thing is SCCF update. Matt DePaulis. I'm not sure he's with us today. Oh, he is
I'm
with
here.
There he is. Okay, go ahead, Matt.
Hey, good to see everyone. Couple of quick updates for you today. The water quality is actually picking up in terms of salinity and where we are in the estuary. So we're almost back in the optimum band, which is something we have not been in for almost 200 days at this point. We've been sparingly, but consistently has not been something we've seen in a while. And it's important to realize that this is all strictly rain dependent, weather driven. Nothing in the management of this system has resulted in this. So, really disappointing. This is what we've seen over the entirety of the dry season and now this dry, wet season. The lake is actually pretty low. It's under 11 feet still, pushing right up against that water savings management band. And we have not seen cutoffs in the rest of the system. So, all of those cutoffs that we experienced earlier in the system, earlier in the season, that were done ostensibly to lessen the pain later in the season have not resulted in anything different for us at all. So this has really been hugely disappointing in the part of South Florida Water Management District, Army Corps of Engineers. We supposedly have new tools online with the C43 reservoir that was supposed to help this. We have not seen any water going into or out of that reservoir, despite the ribbon cutting happening a year ago tomorrow. So overall, really disappointing. Hopefully, we can see something change in the future, but from a management standpoint in our water system, this was terrible. Right now, we have 175 CFS back pumping into the lake, so they're actually taking water out of our river to store in the lake to use for water supply later in this dry season or this wet dry season now too. So the rains have been helping significantly. We're not seeing anything storing in the lake, and I wouldn't expect anything to change if the situation goes back to us not having these watershed flows. So that's good news in the short term, but no news and bad news in the long term as well. I
Hey,
did look into.
Jeff, this doesn't reflect how they're managing the lake. This reflects just a lack of rainfall.
No, this is how they're managing the lake as well.
Yeah.
The rainfall is the one thing that's saving us now, but throughout this entire dry season and now into this dry wet season we've been getting, there has been a complete abdication of anyone acknowledging the needs of the environment, acknowledging that the environment should be an equal stakeholder and is an equal stakeholder on paper throughout this system. But there's not been an acknowledgement of that, and nobody has been managing for the health of the estuary. And this started with lake recovery a year ago when they dumped a bunch of water. The Army Corps dumped a bunch of water to the East Coast that the East Coast didn't want at that point, which now meant they didn't have the water to give to us when we needed it. But all of this again is not balancing in the estuary. It's really highlighting the needs of water users south and east of the lake at the expense of us.
Okay.
Translate that a little bit. It sounds like what you're saying is that we, meaning the waters around the barrier islands here, need some fresh water to make the salinity less of an issue. to lessen the salinity. And you're saying that rather than getting water from the lake to do that and down the river, the water is going for irrigation around the lake and to the East Coast. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, yeah. So we have a situation where in the dry season, when we're not receiving the water from the watershed that we need to balance the salinity gradient, we need water from the lake to manage that salinity gradient. There's a legal mechanism that prevents that water supply from getting too low. The way that legal mechanism is set up is it once there's an exceedance, it's called, of the minimum flows, that starts a 365-day clock before you can have a second exceedance, which leads to a violation, which leads to further actual potential repercussions. So instead of approaching this minimum flow level as something that's what it is, something that's damaging our estuary and is going to need years of recovery, it has instead been treated by our water managers as a box checking exercise. So when they achieved that minimum flow exceedance, when the amount of water moving through the S79 Franklin Lock and Dam structure dipped below that 457 cubic feet per second, instead of saying, what do we do? How do we stop this damage from happening? The district treated that as, okay, this starts a 365-day clock where we don't have to think about this for a year because legally we don't have to worry about it, which in my opinion is completely the wrong approach to take to this because as these were set up, this is a multi-year recovery that is now going to be necessary to go through before we get back to the stage that we were at even prior to this. So that means that's a year of tape grass not growing, tape grass dying, all of these organisms in the estuary really suffering, as well as population of fish species that are really important to our estuary. Sea trout, snook, all of these juvenile species that have their juvenile stage in the estuary have really suffered over the last year. So this is something that we're going to be seeing the ramifications from for the next few years. And it's going to be really worrying when 2 years from now, when our fish populations are lowered, people are going to be saying, what do we do about it? It's not what do we do about it, it's what could we have done about it 2 years earlier.
And is the issue with the South Florida Water Management District or with the Army Corps of Engineers?
It's a combination of both. So we're in a situation where the Army Corps is managing the water and the South Florida Water Management District is giving them recommendations. The South Florida Water Management District has provided recommendations that are not adequate for the needs of the estuary, and the Army Corps is blindly going along with those. So we're not seeing leadership from either organization that acknowledges the needs of the estuary and the environment.
Yeah, are there any, thank you, Matt. Are there any questions from the panel for Matt?
One, Matt, there was a sewage spill in LaBelle that dumped into the Caloosahatchee. Do you know the impact that that's going to have, or it's too early to call?
I think it's too early to call. It's obviously going to be a nutrient spike. Hopefully not enough to spawn one of these toxic algae blooms. Depending on the size, that's a risk, but I'm not sure about the specifics about this one. And then obviously the direct impact of engaging with that spill could be harmful to people. So I think follow any health warnings around that, but I'm not sure about the specifics of it in terms of if we're going to feel any impacts on our beaches down here. There could be dilution at that point.
Tony, where was the spill?
Something about a pipe broke and it was supposed to be diverted to get into the sewer plant and it didn't. And it went into a creek and then the creek dumps into the Caloosahatchee. It was just on the news this morning. So it's a little sketchy detail, but it
What
was
on the east side, wasn't it, Tony, on the east side of the metro area?
I'm not quite sure where it was in LaBelle, but the news this morning that I heard, it was, eventually going to get it into the Caloosahatchee, and they were kind of putting out some warnings. I forget what the volume was, but it was pretty substantial spill from what I understand. Yeah.
Okay. Change your LaBelle swimming plans this week.
Yeah. Are there any other questions for Matt from the panel? Ken from the community?
No, nothing.
Okay, Matt, thank you very much.
Yep. And just one other quick update. I looked a little bit into coyote removal question that you had
Right.
put before me. I think that the because Sanibel owns the beaches, that's why there's all these other hoops to jump through with city council. Private property, you have a lot more leeway. There are still state discharge rules, so if you're not defending property, life and limb, it gets a little hairy if you're discharging firearms. When there's nuisance creatures, that leads more towards protecting property, but you still might run into the Florida statutes. Air rifles are not cordoned by or governed by the same statutes, so there's a little bit more leeway there. But because of if you were approaching the problem on private property, you'd have a lot less hoops to jump through than Sanibel needs to on its public beaches.
Right, but I think the question, at least I was asking, is if the Captiva community and Lee County wanted to eliminate some of the coyotes or cull them so that the turtles had a fair chance of survival, what steps would we take at that point, or what would prevent us from doing that? Is that just going to the county or going to the state? Obviously, we don't want individuals shooting coyotes, but we would want some sort of governmental practice to.
Yeah, so if it was an organized, if it was an organized group, it would have to go through the county, because then you would be touching the county beaches, the public property, and it would be likely people operating on property that was not their own. So that would then need to go through the county as well.
No, but the question is it, so for example, if the panel wanted to cull coyotes on Captiva, is it the county that would then be responsible for doing that if they chose to do it? Is that who does
The
that?
count you would have to work with the county, and the county would likely have to work with the state, the Florida Wildlife Commission.
Okay. Any other coyote questions? No. Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the South Seas redevelopment legal update. I can do a quick presentation. There are two appeals pending as we sit here today. One is an appeal of the decision of the District Court of Appeal, which reversed Judge Schenko's decision limiting South Seas to 912 units. Everybody knows that it was 912 units that was created with the zoning of South Seas. There was a settlement agreement with the Captiva Civic Association and the county back in 2003, limiting it to 912 when they sought to exceed that back in 2003. That contract was enforced by Judge Schenko last year. He said it was a valid contract. That decision was overruled, was reversed by the District Court of Appeal, claiming that the county didn't have the authority in 2003 to make that agreement, to sign that contract, and that what they called ultra virus, it was beyond their authority to do so, even though it was in effect for 20 some odd years. In any case, that decision of the District Court of Appeal is now being appealed by the CCA, and they are seeking either a rehearing at the District Court of Appeal level or an appeal is made to the Florida Supreme Court to hear that case. So that appeal is pending. A second appeal is the decision by the administrative law judge in the Doe case to when she held that the code amendment that exempted South Seas from the 3 hotel units per acre that applies to every other property on Captiva, that code amendment did not violate the Captiva plan. She held that it was too speculative to determine whether or not building that could take place under that code amendment would violate the plan. That case is also under appeal. And we're either asking, or the CCA is asking, that the Court of Appeal revisit that, or that it be decided by the Florida Supreme Court. no one, those appeals have been filed, and the community or the CCA is just waiting to see how the District Court of Appeal or the Florida Supreme Court will react to those requests. Thirdly, the case where the South Seas has sued the CCA for claiming that the 912 unit cap did not include hotels and that the CCA was wrong to state that it does. The CCA's position is it's absolutely accurate that the 912 in the settlement agreement always included hotels, as did the 1973 zoning approval. And the CCA has filed a motion for summary judgment, which is now pending before Judge Schenko and will be heard on September 1st at 1:30 p.m. And hopefully that case will get dismissed. My understanding is the CCA is asking for both attorney's fees and sanctions against South Seas for commencing with a meritless, frivolous lawsuit. So that's where we stand at this point with the cases that are directly relevant to the development on South Seas. And we can just await for the result of the appeal requests and for the motion for summary judgment pending before Judge Schenko. Judge Schenko's got a lot of cases before him related to this South Seas development. With respect to the Rauschenberg property, as you know, South Seas has purchased that, and they sought to set up a condominium association on the Gulf side of Captiva Drive. There seems to be a dispute over whether they can create 47 units on that property, because they have filed that recorded that with the tax appraiser's office, but at this point, we're not aware of any effort to rezone the property or to incorporate it into South Seas or to develop it. So that is in a holding action. In terms of the lawsuit against the Captiva Community Panel, us, for not producing records that were requested by South Seas. As you know, we've taken the position that we produced everything that they've asked for. And that is what my understanding is where we stand at this point. The South Seas had said they did a public records request from the city of Sanibel and CEPD. And as a result of documents they received from those two entities, that they believe that the panel, didn't turn over everything that they requested. So we asked them what documents they received from other entities that suggest that, because we're happy to go look and see if we missed something. And what they told our attorneys is that they will send us a link to 17,000 documents they got from the city of Sanibel and the CEPD, and we can look through it and see if there's anything that we think we should have produced that we didn't. Obviously, we can't do that. It's unreasonable. And so my understanding is South Seas has now said they'll turn over about 1,000 to 2,000 pages or documents so that we can take a look at that. And our attorney is saying, don't be ridiculous. If you think there are some documents that you received from CEPD or Sanibel that suggests we didn't turn over something, just tell us which ones they are and we'll go look for them. And that's where we stand at this point. And my understanding is that the case is basically on hold pending discussions between the attorneys about that. And so that's where we are with the pending lawsuits. Are there any other questions? Did I leave something out, or is something unclear? I'll ask the panel first.
So David, an interesting situation occurred in the last couple of weeks. South Seas filed a limited development order for the main road of going in South Seas Plantation Road. This limited development order had to do with the requirements from the rezone of the property, in the sense that they had to have special markings and signs erected for pedestrian and bicycle traffic. What's interesting, and the reason why I bring this up, is So it'll tell you everything you need to know about them. The way they filed the application, it would lead you to believe that they own the entire road, which is not the case. There are 5 associations that own a good portion of the road. Approximately 35 to 40% is owned by the associations, and South Seas owns the rest of the road. Well, the way they filled out their application and signed by Greg Spencer, it leads the county to believe that they do own the entire road, and that they'll be able just to do what they want to do on the road. Obviously, those associations are looking at ways to approach the county and inform them that that's not the case, and that we are not a party to this limited development order application. So they also plan on erecting signs on the schematic of the sign placement within the resort. Also has signs going on people's private property, which is interesting. And so specifically the Soraya property. And so we'll see what happens from that standpoint. The associations are working with their council to figure that out, but they're a sneaky bunch, that's for sure.
I gave the report, and correct me, but I don't know if I mentioned that the cert petition that was filed by the 20 petitioners and the CCA and Royal Shell, that is the case that's also pending before Judge Schenko, and that's going to be heard on August 4th. And that's the case where the 20 petitioners are seeking to invalidate the rezoning of the property. And one of the arguments that is before Judge Schenko and in the cert petition is that the rezoning, the granting of the rezoning by the county basically approved changes on property that the applicant, South Seas, does not own. And that would invalidate, if found true, could invalidate the rezoning application. And so what Ken is just raising is that they're putting signage, for example, bicycle signage, on parts of the roadway that they don't own. And if that is the case, and if that was a requirement of the rezoning application, and that the county basically granted this application for rezoning based on safety signage that was necessary on property that the applicant did not own, it would raise questions as to the legitimacy of this rezoning application. So this is all tied together, and this will be part and parcel of what's going to be heard on August 4th before Judge Schenko. There are a lot of questions regarding the legitimacy of that rezoning approval. So that is pending. I'm sorry if I failed to mention that, but Ken reminded me of it, and that is one of the issues before Judge Schenko. Any other questions regarding the litigation that's going on?
David, is there some date that you expect all this might be clarified?
Well, if the 2 appeals are denied, that would be the end of that issue, those issues, the 912 and the DOA case. If on August 4th, the Judge Schenko grants the cert petition, the writ of certiorari, I'm basically stating that the rezoning should not have been approved as such. There is no question that that will be appealed by the county and probably South Seas. And so that will go on for months after that. But that, I think most development, if that happens, will be placed on hold. If the 2 appeals, or one of the 2 appeals, is granted, then that will go on for a number of months. But that also then could have the impact or the effect of placing any development on hold pending the outcome of those appeals. So I think if Judge Schenko rules against the CCA in the cert petition and the petitioners, and the two appeals are denied, then I think we're coming to closure with respect to that litigation. On the other hand, if any of those three cases, if CCA or the community, the petitioners prevail in any of the three of those cases, then I think those will be important steps in preserving the existing density on Captiva, and things will continue for a while. I hope.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if the community prevails on any one of those three, it's going to raise a lot of serious questions about whether this development can go forward as currently planned. Any other questions? Thanks, Jay. Okay, any questions from the community, Ken?
No.
Okay. The next thing on the agenda is iguana control. As everybody knows, CEPD had received a grant and was expending a significant sum of funds to control iguanas on Captiva. My understanding, or we've been told at the last couple of meetings, that that CEPD is no longer involved in the iguana control business. And so Ken Goodham, our administrator, communicated with CEPD and found out as much information as he could about the costs, who was doing the iguana control work, how many iguanas they were eliminating, catching, eating, whatever they're doing with them over the past year. And most of that information, I believe, was provided to the panel by Ken. I hope people took a look at that. I have been receiving some communications from people in the community who were somewhat concerned, very concerned, that there was no longer an iguana control practice that was going to take place going forward. So the question before us today is, should we consider as a panel trying to continue with the iguana control on Captiva, and how would we go about doing that? What I took a look at our funds in the bank as the panel, and I took a look at the cost of the iguana control vendors that the CPD was using based on what Ken provided us. And what I see it comes to is that two vendors, they were using two vendors. CPD was using two vendors, Alfredo, who we used before, and another vendor. If we figured out a way to retain those two vendors and have them visit Captiva and do their work once a week each, it would cost us approximately $52,000 a year. So, if we're willing to spend $52,000 a year, we could retain the two vendors who would then come to Captiva and do their thing once a week. If we wanted to go back to what we had way back when, which was just Alfredo for once a week, that would cost $26,000 a year. They both said they would visit and do their capturing on Captiva for $500 a day, from what I saw in the communications. So here's the question. Do we have, as a panel, and Ken, wherever you are, correct me if I'm wrong, we have in the bank $157,000 that is liquid, that the panel has in its coffers. So the question is, do we want to spend some of that to retain the iguana control people and then try to figure out a way over the next couple of months to get funding to either from our community or from some grant or somewhere to continue it without delving into our funds any further than we would have over the next couple of months. But it seems to me that if we have 157,000 in the bank, we have some fundraisers coming up. Even if we spend $52,000 for a year for the two vendors once a week, it would still give us over $100,000 that we would have in the bank. And we would still have time to look for other funding. So the question is, do we as a panel feel an obligation or believe we have an obligation to the community to figure out a way to keep this the iguanas under control? It does look like, based on the data, that the vendors were eliminating lots of iguanas. So that's what we say, and I leave it open. I open it up to the panel for discussion.
I would like to say what I read, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it was pretty linear in terms of the amount of effort put in and the number of iguanas removed, and that if you do more, you get. It's just linear. It was however much money we spent, we kept getting about the same amount. So the idea that, which I had, which was, okay, they're sort of under control now. It appears there's this endless supply of iguanas on our island. Anyway, so I think we should continue on with the program. I think the panel should fund it. I don't know if we can get a grant or not. We're working on our development committee to try to raise funds, but I certainly am in support of it.
Ken Goodham, you're here. Were the numbers that I put out there basically correct?
Yes. They're basically $500 a day per vendor.
Okay. And
Good.
we have $157,000 in the bank.
Do we have any idea how much the iguana population was affected by the fact that we had these two people
No.
iguanas for the last year?
No, what Linda was referring to is that if they showed up, they took about 20 iguanas. If they showed up more often, they took more iguanas, but it didn't seem to have any impact on the total take. So maybe, a heavy hit for a year or two might start to dilute it, but from what the numbers the CEPD produced, it didn't. It was a very consistent take.
They show up,
they
show up, they got their 20 iguanas. If
Right.
they show up again, they get their 20 iguanas.
Okay, so if we spend 50,000 a year, then we have two iguanas hunters working 1 day a week, and we get about 40 iguanas a week.
Let's say, yeah, on average.
On average. So do we have any idea how many iguanas are on Captiva?
No.
Yeah,
They don't do a census, unfortunately.
The iguana census people haven't come around for a while.
And it changes based on birth rates.
Yeah.
And frankly, climate. I mean, if you want to get a lot of iguanas, wait for a cold snap.
Yeah, there is two other things to consider. The CEPD last year had them coming out 4 days a week.
Oh, okay.
So they had each one coming out 2 days a week. So they got a grant of, I don't know, it was 100,000, whatever it was. And so at $52,000 a year, Jay, we would be reducing the hunting capacity by half.
I see. Okay.
The other thing that I couldn't quite understand from the communications, Ken, is that on one hand, they said that South Seas was not permitting the iguana hunters to work on South Seas, but then it looked like they were capturing about 40% of the iguanas on South Seas.
That wasn't clear. I wasn't clear on my communication. CEPD's program included South Seas. When we were doing it before as the panel, a lot of times Alfredo was not allowed to go on the property back then. So it was the old program that South Seas was kind of doing on its own. When CEPD took it over, they covered the entire island, and the numbers that were being shown there were from the two vendors for CEPD and what they took in each of the four areas.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the two vendors under the CEPD program were doing the whole island.
Yes, and about half of the iguanas that they were taking were coming from South Seas. But I was trying to make the point that if we went back to the previous scope of iguana eradication that didn't include South Seas, or if South Seas would not let them on the property because it was being done by the panel or not being done by a government entity, and therefore wouldn't have the liability protection, that would allow us to say, okay, we'll at least do the parts of the island that we can get to, which would be the village, the Gold Coast, and Twin Waters, and hopefully South Seas would take care of the property, its own property. We don't know. I'm just saying, in the past, South Seas didn't let the trappers on when it was the panel doing it. If they revert to that, that would allow us to limit the scope.
Okay, well,
Is it clear where they were trying to get to in South Seas? I mean, as we all know, South Seas only has 120 acres of the 304. So, Ken, do you know if it was strictly just South Seas property or just they weren't being allowed through the gate?
I don't know. That was being handled by Dave and then John Jensen were working with Alfredo, so they would have a better sense of who was allowed. And my sense from talking to John sometimes was that they weren't able to get through the gate.
Yeah, well, that can be dealt with. And then, the other question, after experiencing a fairly chilly winter as we did, and having a couple of days where iguanas were dropping out of trees and whatnot. And look, I don't know much about it. I just know they're all over the damn place. But does it make sense to do this flood the eradication process during the winter months where they might be easier to catch?
You'd have to talk to somebody who knows iguana habits better than I.
okay.
Whether there's an advantage to getting them when the population would be down or when they're out of breeding season versus trying to play catch up when they start laying eggs.
Would it be advantageous for the community panel to have an expert on one day to kind of educate the community and us on what the best practices are, and even I don't know a lot about it. I know they're in my backyard and I just have fun with my pellet gun, but there are certainly times where they might be a hell of a lot easier to catch. So, I mean, David, shouldn't we bring somebody on to educate us all about this? Then we'd be able to best allocate the funds in ways that might be better at times to get them.
Well, I think our experience has been, since we've been doing this for many, many years, and I take what you're saying, and I think it may make sense to have Alfredo or the other vendor come to the next panel meeting so that they can give a presentation and answer some of the questions that Ken is posing. But I think our experience has been basically what Linda laid out and what Ken laid out, which is that there seems to be an unlimited supply of iguanas, and it's a question of just controlling them. And if you get 20 iguanas a day on average, and you keep doing that, you keep things under control. That's been sort of the experience we have. If you stop doing it, we don't know what will happen. And is there a period of time when you can get 40 a day if you do it during the winter versus during the summer? And is the 20 a day an average, or is it 40 versus 5? We can ask that question, and Ken, maybe we can arrange for one or both of them to come to our August meeting. But Tony, did you want to say something?
Well, I think you're right on spot. I think because we don't know when the egg laying season is, or and to me, if you can capture, or maybe you do a full force during that egg laying thing to try to limit the production of these things, and then maybe scale it back. But again, I think you're right on. Let's have Alfredo and these people come in and educate us, because I know sometimes when I've seen Alfredo way back, he says, I got this one, they're all full of eggs. So when is that window? And should we attack heavily at that window and lessen it up maybe later on? Just a thought process.
Right. I mean, it is possible that instead of doing two vendors once a week, every month, every week of the year, maybe you do 4 days a week during certain months of the year and 1 day a week during other months, or not at all. So that we can discuss and see if there is any evidence to suggest one way or the other how to do that. But the real question is, do we want to spend $52,000 initially as a maximum that we could spend over the year, and then see if we can offset that with grants or funds or something, so that we don't have to spend the full 52, and figure out some way to maintain this program going forward over the next number of years. Linda.
Couple comments. People in the webinar are saying that breeding season is early spring, and it occurs generally during the dry season. What I would suggest is, number one, I think we should go forward. Number two, we should spend, it's $50,000 seems okay to me. Number three, could somebody on the panel agree to become the expert here, rather than all of us having to find out the ins and outs of iguana breeding, and come back to us and recommend what they think the panel should do in terms of timing or any improvements to the program.
Okay, there are two issues. One is, do we want to keep the two vendors engaged? And then the second issue is, if we agree to engage them, do we want to have a panel member sort of take charge of this so that we can expend our funds in the most efficient way possible going forward, whether that be 4 days, 1 day, 2 days, whatever it is, and have a better understanding of it. And then the third thing, since we have Marguerite sitting here attentively, how do we figure out a way, either through grants, and Ken, maybe you can help with this. I mean, CEPD did get a grant. Whether or not we as a panel can get grants in the same way, because they were a government entity and we are not, whether or not there's some way we can fund this other than from individual contributions from members of the community.
Yeah, and actually, David, I know from Lisa, who works as the secretary for the CPD, she is actively trying to extend the is it called a fund? Whatever
grant.
The grant they had coming in, and I can't say the outcome yet, but it's not totally impossible. So I feel we should definitely decide to continue it, but there is a very big possibility that the CEPD is able to extend the grant for the iguana hunting.
That's the first I'm hearing that. Ken, did you get that impression from CEPD?
No. I mean, from the report last month, it sounded as though they were shifting their grant request to a different category that wasn't going to include the iguana eradication, that they felt there was a finite amount of money they could get from Wildlife Commission, and they were going to move it elsewhere. I had not heard that Linda was going to pursue this, or...
That's what I understood too, that they decided to use the rest of the fund for the tree removal, and that then the grant was used up. But I spoke to Lisa, and Lisa is working on I don't know if it's an extension of the grant, but she sounded positive. It doesn't mean I'm not saying here that they will be able to find more money, but there is a big possibility.
John, do you have any insight on this?
So I want to just first say, as only one of 5 commissioners, I can only speak for myself at this moment. But this subject matter is not a closed issue at the CEPD. I want everybody to understand that. I'll make sure of that. Going forward, we do not necessarily even have to be dependent on whether we get the grant or not. I think that if the community decides this is important enough, this could be factored into the CEPD budget going forward. That's just an option that I think we should consider. The grant obviously would be the preferred way to go about things. And I think that there isn't enough data back on the status of that grant, what funds have been spent already. I put a call into Lisa yesterday, and I'm waiting back to get a little bit more of the financial data on how that grant has been spent thus far and what's left. So I would say at our next meeting next week, I will make sure that it gets added to the agenda.
Okay. Okay, then I'd like to propose a motion, basically, which is that the panel wants to have the vendors continue to control iguanas on Captiva. We would ask Ken Goodaham to work or communicate with CEPD to see, in fact, CEPD either through grants or through their normal revenue, the ad valorem taxes they collect, will continue to fund the vendors. If not, the panel will spend up to $52,000 over the next year while it seeks additional funding to keep the vendors employed on Captiva. And that, Ken, you would also advise the 2 vendors that the intent is to keep them working so they understand that they will continue to have the opportunity to work here so they don't end up working somewhere else and won't be able to come back on Captiva. So that's the motion, is basically to have Ken communicate with CEPD to see if there's going to be future funding for the iguana program. If not, the panel will take it over with a maximum of $52,000 a year, advise the vendors of 1 day a week to initially, and that we will seek funding separate and apart from our normal revenue to support the program. And then, Ken, we would ask the 2 iguana, or 1 or 2 of them, to come to our August meeting. I know that's a lot, but that's the way I'm summarizing this. That's sort of my motion. Is there a second, and then we can discuss it?
I'll second it.
Okay. Can we have discussion over this, please? Or further discussion if we need it.
David, if I may say, I believe, and I agree with the panel, there's not enough data on the results of this effort. And if we could press upon the vendors as much as possible, or as much as they're capable of giving us more feedback as to, when they do come out here, what does the landscape look like? Are they finding that they're making a difference or whatnot? Do they have any scientific insight or are they even able to tell us, what the status of the iguana population is as they monitor this thing every week? That data would go a long way in obviously being able to justify a budget on the CEPD side.
Okay. All right. I think we can certainly add that to when we have the iguana people out here, if Ken can arrange that, that's certainly a question we would ask John. Is there any discussion of this, or do we want to proceed in this fashion? Or do we not? Don't all speak on top of each other. It's
okay. Well, we have a vote and we have a second, right? And we've had discussion. So is it time to vote?
Yes.
Call the question.
Yeah. Okay. All those in, do we have a second, Ken? Did we have a
Oh,
second?
yeah, there was a second.
Okay. Well, is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor vote, say aye.
I,
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion pass. Ken, you'll summarize the motion that was all over the place, please?
Okay.
Not now, but you just in the
Yeah.
minute.
In the minutes, and I will also reach out to the vendors and to CEPD and let you know offline, separate from the meeting, that we can arrange that for August.
Okay, that'd be perfect. And I think it's important for the community to know this. I've been receiving calls that we are going to do everything possible to keep the iguana population under control. The question is, how do you do that? And what does that mean? And I think that's what John and Ken and everybody's been talking about. So we'll see if we can do that. Next thing on the agenda, storm.
Well, actually, David, there were two quick questions that popped up. One has to do with wildlife, not iguanas, which is the lady still prosecuting residents having lights on during turtle hatching season? If so, can someone notify residents when the season opens and closes? Many are off the island at this time. I think season starts, what, May 15th?
It's in May. Yeah.
And goes through the end of November, because it tracks kind of around hurricane season.
We're in the season now, no question. Yeah, Jay or Mike, I saw Mike shaking his head. Do we know whether or not our code enforcement person is out there enforcing lighting on the beach?
I don't know.
Someone is out there.
I reached a settlement with her where we put up glass that filters 45% of the light, which is the maximum the glass makes. The standard, the construction standard, calls for 15%, but she's of the opinion that if she can see light, you're violating the code, even if you have 15% light diffusing glass. So we put up 45%, and that seemed to satisfy her, and she stopped citing us.
Okay.
She has renewed energy. I can tell you that she is out there, and I think she's more active this year than she was last year. And the interesting part that I'm seeing with a bunch of my clients, as a matter of fact, I've got a hearing before Lee County HEX on the 27th about this issue. And you know what I find so interesting about what she does when she takes pictures of the home, she stands up to take the pictures.
Yeah,
and
right.
what we're gonna do to present evidence to HEX is we're actually going to get on the ground and take pictures to see, you know, how this light is being reflected from the ground instead of a person standing up. And with the berm today, I just it's asinine what this woman is doing. So
Yeah, I know. And
Let me say
you
one
know,
thing.
my whole experience was her.
One person at a time. Jay first, then Tony.
Yeah, Tony, my whole experience with her occurred before the dunes were raised in height. You know, I objected to her standing on the ground. I said turtles aren't, you know, this high off the ground, you know, where you're taking pictures from, but that didn't move her at all. She was definitely of the opinion that if I can see a light coming from your house, you know, you're violating the code. And I know that when I put in 45% glass, she could still see a light, but I think she just got to the point where she said, well, Browns have done everything they possibly can, so I'm going to stop pestering them.
Tony.
Yeah, number one, Ken, I'll see you on the 27th because they got me cited too. But you are so true about the new dune. We got cited for the entrance of the shipyard and standing up on the beach. You can't even see the doorway to the shipyard. Now, it's my understanding that we have a new person doing this, not the lady that was last year. I understand there's a new guy out there and he's doing it because my GM, Will Oliver, got called and, you know, we got all this stuff working and stuff. But I understand it's a new guy. And, you know, new guy, they got to justify, hey, that I'm here and I'm here to enforce and therefore you got to pay me. And that's why I need a job. So I'll see you on the 27th. We're doing the same type of litigation, what we're doing to help our residents in the thing. We've taken the turtle logo about turning the lights down, and we're getting it in one of those little flimsy kind of thing that they put on your oil change, they put on your windshield. So we're going to put those up on our sliding glass doors as another reminder, and then we're working with them. But we're all set for the hearing. It's crazy, it's nuts, but we have to kind of, they have to justify their job, otherwise they won't get paid. So that's my little 2 cents. But I will see it, Ken, on the 27th, and we're ready with some pretty good evidence too.
Yeah, it's still, Paula is still the heavy hand there, and I think she has a partner now. And with if most people don't know, the threat is a fine of $5,000 a day for non-abated properties that violate. And the interesting part of this situation, in my case, for my clientele, is that I have a particular client who has already paid $45,000 in Lee County bed tax on this particular property. And the conversation I had with Paula, she had the nerve to literally tell me maybe they should stop renting. And this is who you're dealing with, okay?
Right.
And or the other suggestion was pass the fine along to the guests, which I thought was very clever. That's a great way to bring back business on Captiva.
That doesn't help the turtles.
Look, I don't think my experience with the county is that whoever these individuals are, they're carrying out county policy. And so whatever decisions are being made with respect to enforcement, it's coming from above, you said Paula, but above Paula or above that. So the question is, Tony and Ken, if you go before the HEX and there's a hearing on this, if it looks like this can be resolved during that process and there's some resolution with respect to how future enforcement will take place, then let us know. If it looks like this is just going to continue and going to be unresolved, then I think it behooves us maybe for the panel to meet with some of the commissioners, because they make the final decisions on everything, including enforcement. So that's what I would suggest is you let the panel know how the hearings go, and then if it looks like it's not getting resolved in a way that makes sense, then the panel maybe has to meet with representatives of the panel have to meet with the Board of County Commissioners.
One other thing, David, too, and Ken, this. These people have a lot of power. I mean, they're more powerful than anything else. And the hearings is something kind of like they make us go through this, I think, just to kind of flex their muscles more so than the fine that they want to put on you. They just want to let you know that you are under our thumb and we will make you bend down and hurt you if you don't do what we want you to do. And that's what it is. So we got to go in there and say, oh, gee whiz, we're so, do all the baloney to get through.
David, contact Kevin's office, and he put me in touch with Mickey Rostrowski, and I had a very lengthy conversation with her. And just like all bureaucracy, it's like, well, they've got a job to do, and we our hands are tied, and it's a round and around thing. But all my years I've been on Captiva, I've never seen this kind of level of enforcement that we're seeing right now.
Yeah. I think the question is, I mean, speaking for myself, I don't have a problem with enforcement, but I have a problem with enforcement about irrational policy. And so
totally.
The question is whether there's some irrationality going on here, something arbitrary, something that doesn't make sense. And that, Kevin you may have spoken to Mickey, who's the head of the Department of Community Development, and code enforcement is under her jurisdiction. but eventually it goes to the Board of County Commissioners. They're the elected officials. And if you think the policy is arbitrary, capricious, doesn't make sense, then we have to go directly to the elected officials. And so that's what I'm suggesting, is that if you believe we're at that point now, then we can choose to do so now. But if you want to wait till after the hearing and then
David, we're at that point. I'm going to tell you right now, we are at that point. I have another client of mine that just yesterday told me that he was included in the 27th hearing. So this is, and again, in all my years in being on Captiva, and I'm sure Tony will echo this, we've never had to go through, it's never gotten to the point of going to the hex ever. This is a first. And if it's that extreme, then there needs to be some kind of rational thought here on how they're going about their business. Because right now it's not whatsoever.
okay. So is it, Tony, I mean, I'll ask you and Jay, who's experienced this, do you think it's time that we bring in one of the commissioners to talk to them about this?
Yeah, I would say so, because the standard she is using is, can I, if I'm standing on the beach, see a light coming from the property? The code reads you're not allowed to illuminate a turtle nest. Being able to see a light is a lot different than a light illuminating a nest.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I think that, that needs to be clarified as to whether or not, just simply being able to see a light is enough to put homeowners through all this stuff.
Okay. Ken Goodham, wherever you are. Do you want me to reach out? I can reach out to one of the commissioners and with Ken and see if we can arrange to have either a commissioner or someone from community development to come to the August meeting.
I think that's a good idea. You probably have a better relationship with the commissioners at this point than I do.
Okay, I'll take care of the commissioners and I'll talk to Ken about if that schedule doesn't work, whether we bring somebody from community development. All right? Is that okay with the panel?
Yep, I agree with doing
Okay.
that.
Yes.
Done.
Yeah,
Done.
you need a reasonable standard to apply here.
I agree. I mean, everybody wants to protect the turtles. It's just, you got to do it in a reasonable fashion. I agree. Okay, next is Stormwater Committee, Jay Brown.
On the Stormwater Committee, I was unable to have a conversation with Phil Gilligy this past month. He sent me an email saying they are on schedule to have the study completed to the point where they could present it to the community in October and have a final draft of the plan written in December. I'm still struggling with him as to whether or not the area that's to be drained is just Captiva Drive and possibly Wiles Drive, or does the area to be drained cover the whole, all of the side streets in the village? I've told him, very forcefully that I don't think we're going to have a successful program unless we include the side streets, in the coverage area. And I'm not able to get a commitment from him as to whether or not they are actually doing, the side street areas or not. I know he does not want to. His belief is that if we drain all the side street areas, this will result in Captiva having a very large retention area where the collected stormwater has to be processed before it can be released into the bay. And, his opinion is that there's no way Captiva would be able to have, the property available to have a retention area capable of collecting or holding that amount of water, of us being able to find an area like that. But again, I've encouraged him, develop a plan for the streets, determine how big the retention area is. Just don't discard this, from your analysis now. And I am not clear at this point as to whether or not he's following my advice or not. So,
Well, the thing that strikes me is to have a meeting in October in the community rather than November makes no sense. And so the first thing is, though, if there's going to be a public meeting, it should be in November, not in October.
he does not want to do it in November because he believes that that will mess up their timetable. They have to have the whole process completed by March. And it's his belief that to meet the March deadline to have the whole process finished and have the consultants paid and everything means you've got to have the final report in December. And to get the final report in December, you got to have the public meeting in October. So that's where he is on that. I guess, David, if he has to stick to that, it could be a Zoom meeting, with the public.
Has he suggested a Zoom meeting?
No, but I don't see any reason why we couldn't do a Zoom meeting.
All right. Well, Jay, can we find that out? Because if it's got to be an in-person meeting in October, you're going to have very poor turnout.
Very, very poor attendance. I've told him that.
But he doesn't seem, does he care?
I'd say probably not.
Okay. All right. Could you,
David, this has been a problem from the start in
I
that
know.
we're not allowed to have hardly any input into this process.
I know.
Um,
Okay. Could you,
I would suggest maybe you and I go to, Kevin
okay.
and see if with Kevin with us, if we can get a clear answer to, how comprehensive the area he's looking at.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jay, I remember meeting at the initial meeting that the study was to include the entire island of Captiva from South
No,
Seas.
he excluded
And
South Seas.
right, okay. But there was no discussion at that point about excluding side streets.
No, I know, right.
This seems to be a carve out from what I understand the initial scope of the study was to include.
Right.
So it would be, and I'm being defensive here because I live on one of the side streets,
Absolutely.
that I would be really concerned that where is the water going to flow to off the main road? It's only going to go right or left, one way or the other. And it's only going to exacerbate the situation on those streets that already.
Well, he seems to think the most important priority, in spite of my telling him that it is not, is that Captiva Drive remain passable. And that's the thing that's really important to the community. And I've said,
Can't get to Captiva Drive.
yeah, if
I
the
mean,
signs flooded, right.
All right. All right, Jay, you and I will figure out how to talk to Kevin about this, and see if we can get better control over this process.
Right.
I'll talk to you offline. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
On wastewater, David, I've still got this study on hold pending determination of what the number of units are going to be in South Seas. The reason that's important is if the FGA facility has to be expanded, then I think that will turn out to be a more cost-effective way to provide sewer, at least for the village area of Captiva, versus trying to work with Sanibel and Donax. We were not expecting Sanibel to have all these costs to accept our wastewater, and going that route, the current estimate's about 100,000 a household, and I can't see that ever being acceptable to our community. And so I think if FGA is going to have to be expanded, and we're talking about a whole rebuild of FGA, then I think it becomes possible that we partner up with that effort and we get a much more cost-efficient solution.
I think there's uh, a simple way of thinking about this, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jay. If if the South Seas Development Project is approved and continues based on what they got approval for, which is 435 hotel rooms and
Right.
193 new condos. And if they develop the Rauschenberg property, even at 3 units per acre, which is the existing zoning, that the city of Sanibel, through their existing plant, does not have the ability to process that wastewater.
No, that would force an expansion on them also, which would further add to that cost.
Right, which they have no interest in doing.
Probably not.
Right. So I think what it comes down to is that if development at South Seas and the Rauschenberg property continues, the only option for sewer is going to be on Captiva itself.
Right.
Right. And whether or not you could even expand that plant and make it resilient is a question. We know that Kimberly Horn thinks it may be possible, but we have no
Kimberly
idea.
Horn believes it's very doable. Yes.
But we have no idea what DEP would do or what the cost
Right.
would be.
No, that's true.
So, but I think it's fair to say we need to see the outcome of development at the Rauschenberg property in South Seas before we make a rational decision. And if those developments continue, then it becomes a question of how we deal with the FGUA plant, which probably won't be an FGUA plant because the county wants to get rid of FGUA. So there's a lot of variables here, but I think we know where we're headed at this point, at least.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
Okie dokie. Any questions for Jay on either stormwater or wastewater at this point? Okay, Ken, anything from the community?
No.
Okay. Infrastructure Committee, my understanding from Mike is that there's nothing new at this point. Is that correct? That is correct. Okay. Bayside Resilience, everybody knows CEPD has decided not to continue with the Bayside Resilience Program. And I think with everybody's permission, I'm going to put a full discussion of that on we're going to talk about it at the August meeting, and then we'll have a full discussion at the September meeting when people are back in town, at least some of the people who I know want to work on this project. So, and I know Linda Ladd is interested in working closely with that committee. So that's where we are on Bayside Development Committee. Marguerite Tia Maville.
Good. There we are. Hi. It'll be quick. We have the dates secured for 2 fundraising events, the cruise on December 1st, and then Mirth and Magic on February 10th. And right now we are focusing on finding sponsors. We have some, and I am with the help of Linda and Mike Mullins.
Marguerite, is there a letter, and Ken, you're here also, I think. Is there a letter that is going to go out to the community like we usually send out for fundraising in 2026?
Yeah, usually we do it at the end of the year, right?
Yeah, we usually try to time it to when people are coming back down mid-November-ish, so that people have some time to make a contribution before the end of the year.
Okay, because my recollection and experience is that people are very generous when we send out that letter, and now we may include the iguana control as part of that. So in any case, Ken, you'll do that initial draft and get it to those of us who want to sort of add and edit, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and once we know, we also time it to that part of the year because by then we've established some of the things we want to either address during season or we'll want to talk to the community about. So it allows us to put out a list of saying, we want to work on Bayside resiliency, we want to work on iguanas, we want to work on, whatever, and make some specific requests or let people know what our plans are.
We'll have that in hand by the time that letter goes out for sure.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Anything else, Marguerite?
No, that's it from me.
Marguerite, could you give me those dates again? December 1, and what was the other one?
The other one is February 10th.
And what type of event is that going to be?
It's going to be like notes and narratives where we have an entertainer, and so it's going to be a fun event at the Civic Center with an entertainer, some foods to have a fun fundraising event.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the nominating committee. The president of the panel appoints a nominating committee who then works with the community and makes recommendations to the Captiva Community Panel in October. This year, we have 3 people who are either termed out or are up for a renomination. Ken Suarez is his first tour of duty on the panel. It expires at the end of December, and he can be renominated and can spend another 3 years on the panel. Linda Laird is termed out for 1 year at the end of December of 2026, and Bruce McDonald is also termed out at the end of 2026. So in terms of the nominating committee, there are 2 positions actually that the nominating committee has to recommend for. One is Ken's position for renomination if he decides he'd like to stay on the panel, and then to replace Linda. So the nominating committee will deal with 2 vacancies, potential vacancies.
Actually, David, there's only one. Ken Suarez is a CPOA appointee.
Did I get that? Oh, he is. You're right. So it's only one. So it's Linda Laird's position. Thank you, Ken. I stand corrected. So yep. So we will. Some of us will communicate with CPOA. What is it? CPOA. And they will make 2 recommendations in October, and the panel the panel nominating committee will make 1 to replace Linda's position. I would like to ask Tony Lappy again to chair the nominating committee. And I'm going to ask, since it's my appointment, Jim Berg from the Estate Zone of Gold Coast to sit on the nominating committee again. And I'm going to ask Mark Reese from the village to sit on the nominating committee. And they will make a recommendation regarding the vacancy created by Linda's departure. So Tony, Mark Reese, and Jim Berg, both the village, all the village, the Twin Water Stretch, and the Gold Coast. Okay, any questions about the nominating committee?
Just one, not Ken, but can I get the emails addressed? I think last time I had a heck of a time with Jim Berg. Was he on the committee last year?
Yeah,
Last time?
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a heck of a time. I kept getting his wife's thing. So if we have
Jim
any,
does not have his own email address. It's only Susan that has an email address.
okay, well, I'll take her address when somebody wants to, and then Mark's as well. And then I'll reach out through them to let them know that they're on the committee and that we have to make a recommendation to the board by October's meeting, correct?
correct,
Okay,
correct. I'll get that information. Make sure you get their contact information.
okay, thank you.
And you'll let us know if for some reason they don't want to serve, then we'll appoint 2 others. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, they have been spoken to in advance.
all right.
Okay. Okay. Next thing is green flash. So there's a public notice that just came out. It was published on July 1st. And the notice expires on July 31st. And what the proposed activity is that the applicant, Green Flash, is requesting a permit to remove the existing 15-slip marina facility and replace it with a 49 slip marina with 14 boat lifts. So what it says is that 20 slips will be permanent mooring slips and 29 will be transient slips to serve the restaurant with no overnight mooring. So the way I understand this is they have 15 slips that serve the restaurant at this point is going to be replaced by 29 slips that'll serve the restaurant. And then in addition, there'll be 20 slips that'll be permanent slips, mooring slips. I guess they're going to lease those slips to people with boats. And then of those 20 slips, 14 of those will have boat lifts. So they're basically creating a marina or seeking to create a marina at Green Flash. What the public notice is an opportunity for people who have an interest or may be affected by this application to respond and contact the I believe it's the Army Corps of Engineers. You can either get additional project drawings from the Army Corps of Engineers, and you can email them at Michael Ornelia at USACE, which is U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, .army. Says mil, M-I-L, period. We'll put that on, Ken will put that on our website. And there is also an opportunity to request a public meeting to discuss this. And this has to be a request by someone in the community asking for a public meeting on what's being planned and how it might affect the community, the waterways, the Roosevelt Channel, et cetera, et cetera. So
David, he had a public meeting about a year ago. Does that not satisfy the request for a public meeting?
I don't think so. It says the Jacksonville district will receive written comments on the proposed activities as outlined above until July 31st. So anyone who has comments should submit it to the Jacksonville district by July 31st. And they could be submitted electronically via the regulatory request system, the RRS. Or you can submit comments directly to Michael or Nelia and he has his email address. So Ken, if you could put that on the Captiva website so people can see it, that would be helpful. But the answer to your question, Jay, is no. This is around this particular application. I don't remember what they were proposing a couple of years ago, I think it was.
As I recall, it was a bigger development than this, I think.
It might have been. I just don't recall. The other thing, and I'm looking for in the purpose of this public notice is to solicit comments. But I think there's somewhere in here where it says you can request that a public meeting be held. And I'm positive I read that. And so the question is, does the panel, does someone want to ask the Jacksonville district to hold a public meeting on Captiva regarding this application? So there we are. So individuals or the panel could submit comments, or the individuals or the panel can hold a request a public hearing. It says any person, I found it, any person may request in writing within the comment period, that means up to July 31st, that a public hearing be held to consider the application. Requests for public hearing shall state with particularity the reasons for holding a public hearing. Requests for a public hearing will be granted unless the district engineer determines that the issues raised are insubstantial or there is otherwise no valid interest to be served by a hearing. So that's where we stand. So I just received this the other day. I haven't really had a chance to review it thoroughly. I don't know if anybody else has, or if anybody has opinions about this, either about the application itself, about the 49 slip marina, or about the need for a public hearing. I open the floor.
Question, if he's gonna have, how many slips are gonna be with permanent, where people will rent the space?
20.
20, will that affect his parking in the restaurant? If he has 20 boats, if people come in to use their boat and drive there and park a car, will that create some more issues? Because when he's busy, I mean, his parking lot fills up pretty quick for his restaurant stuff. I'm not trying to be negative or anything. I'm just wondering, is that going to be an issue?
Right. And I even think there are some cars in some way associated with the green flash that are parking on one of the side streets at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
The reason for a public hearing to address the parking issue.
right. So I think the question is, for the panel, any individual on the panel can make comments or request a public hearing.
Okay.
The question is, are there enough significant issues affecting the community that the panel should request a public hearing?
David, there is somebody in the audience who wants to discuss this issue as well, if you want me to let them in.
Who is that?
Christian Andrea.
Christian Andrea.
I have no idea who.
Captiva right next door.
Okay, you can let him in.
It may take a minute. They have to accept it.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, so the question is, do we wish to ask for a public hearing as a panel, or do we want to just leave it up to individuals?
Well,
My feeling is we don't know what we don't know and the impact on the community. I have no feelings either way, whether this is good or bad, but I sure would like to learn a little bit to Tony's point about the impact on parking, the impact on traffic around that S-curve. I think there's some unknowns, which I don't even have the questions at this point, but I think it would be prudent to have a community meeting or request one and have those people that may be impacted, either those people living adjacent across the street, for example, and the flow of the traffic even on the water. How is that going to impact people kayaking up and down the channel? A lot of issues that I don't think we have answers to that maybe could bring some clarity to what the impact would be on the lifestyle, the traffic, the parking, etc.
Yeah.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, this is Christian Andrea. I'm an owner in Ventura and on the board as well. I apologize for not being totally prepared here. We just found out about this meeting about an hour ago. I do have an exhibit if I could share. Is that permissible?
Yes, it depends what it is, but
It's just we did an overlay of this in context to the surrounding area a little bit, so more of a larger scale viewpoint. We did it based on the docks we knew about, so we're not aware of this current dock configuration that's being proposed. But in general, it's very similar with the 49 docks. If it's okay for me to share,
you may.
and trying to find there we go. Okay, share. So if you look at and I just did a quick screen capture of the proposed dock configuration here on the right. This is a study we did based on the 2023.
Okay, go ahead. Now we see it.
Oh, sorry, there's a delay. The image on the left is a study that we did based on what we saw coming with the 2023 proposal. What struck us or took us by surprise was what it seems to surprisingly cross what we perceive to be our property line out in the water. But as we understand riparian rights, they're measured perpendicular, as you see on the exhibit on the right. So surprisingly, the docks can extend quite a ways. Again, we perceive our lot line to run straight in the water, but again, the riparian rights allow them to do this. But it does get rather close and does get in front of our area quite a bit. The size of what's being proposed surprised us too, as the dockage next to the building, I think makes perfect sense and no issue. It's that secondary leg that's out there that really impacts a lot of the surrounding properties and adjacent views. And surprisingly, the number of slips of this is relatively comparable to Cabbage Key. I can't get a perfect count of Cabbage Key, but they look like Cabbage Key looks like it stores around 50 plus or minus boats. So the activity, the noise, the boats aren't always quiet, and they tend to amp their music a little bit here and there that you can't control. But again, we're just questioning. This is a residential area surrounding it, and the questioning the need of how many slips need to be done. So whether that secondary leg out there truly has to be part of the application or not, and whether they truly have to extend as far south as it is. And I think we would welcome opportunity to discuss this more with the community as well as Green Flash, as they have been great neighbors. We enjoy them. So we want to support them, but on the other hand, we also want to try to work together with them.
Christian, have you requested a public hearing under their public notice application?
No, we didn't see this coming, so we did not know of this. We knew 2 years ago or 3 years ago it was in the works, and we hadn't. At least if it's in the mail, it's not in the right person's hands. So, like I said, we need to get caught up to speed. So, if it's permissible, we can request that or whatever is appropriate. But it would be helpful to have continuing meetings with Green Flash to see what can be developed in tandem together here.
Well, your community is adjacent to Green Flash, so I do recommend that you continue communication with them. But your community again is in a position to request a public hearing. So the question I would ask you to let us know is whether you as the HOA, I guess for what is it, Captiva Ventura, are going to request a public hearing.
I'm not the president of our association, but I believe I can speak for him, and I will say yes. I'm vice president on the board.
Okay. All right. We're obviously not going to opine on this proposal. Most of us haven't had a chance to study it. The only question really thank you for sharing the screen. The drawing that's on there is a little different than obviously was being presented today, but or the current application, but it is similar. So the question before the panel is I'm assuming the panel doesn't have an opinion on the particular project, the application at this point. The only question before the panel, Ken, could you take that off the screen? Thank you. The only question before the panel at this point is, does the panel want to request the public hearing? As a panel.
Well, so if Ventura Captiva is going to request it, then do we need to do it?
Well, we won't know for sure if they are. We have until July 31st. He has to go back to his board. Christian does. So I don't know whether or not they will or will not do that. John Rosen seems to be interested in a public hearing to get more information. It's not a big deal to request one. I think if the panel requests one, they will more likely than not have a public hearing.
I think from the parking issue, I think that's very important to the community, and I would just like to make sure that the issues of the aquatic preserve have been addressed. I'm sure they are, because how can you get a permit without them?
Well, I suspect that SCCF is reviewing this in some
Yep.
fashion.
Yep.
So that would also be the case.
And yeah, and we're a compromised waterway or something. I forget the right term already, close to the island because of the SCC, the water issues. So I don't know if more boating would hurt the situation as well. So I would say yes. Have a hearing. Let's ask questions.
Tony, how many slips does Twin Waters have?
Depends on the size of the boats, but I would say we're probably in the neighborhood of 30.
30. So
Depending on the size of the boats. Because
So
the front dock can be taken up by, 4 or 5 boats, or it could be taken up by 7 or 8 boats, depending on their lengths.
So we're
But
talking, that
here's
gives you
the
a
point.
sense of the size, though. If Tony's got 30 slips, we're talking 49 slips here.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing, just to mention, and I'm just saying, it seems to me if people in the Captiva are going to do something, whether it would have been me or somebody else, usually did he come in front of the panel at
No,
all?
no.
Isn't that, partial of, I don't know, living in the community, kind of saying, here's what I want to do. What do you guys think? Not that we can control it, but it was kind of a neighborly thing, or, so the neighbor people don't have to do it. In other words, I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, these permits are state and federal, Tony, so they don't know that we exist or don't feel like they have to come in front of us.
Correct. I get you. Thank you.
Jay, do you have any feelings? You know Tim well.
Yeah, I think my own view would be that this is something that I would think several people in the public are going to have an interest in. What this is, and probably the best way for these people to understand what's going to be involved with this marina would be a public meeting held by us. That would get the maximum, penetration of the community, or the broadest opportunity for the Captiva public to participate in a public hearing. So I guess I'd be inclined to ask for one.
Okay. All right. So there's 2 things we can do. One is as a panel, we can request the district to just set a public hearing on Captiva, which they say they do, and it seems like they do pretty regularly. And the other question is whether or not we would like to invite, as the panel, a representative of Green Flash to come and just do a presentation before the panel, separate and apart from that.
Right. That's what I would envision doing.
Okay. So I'll make a motion that that the panel, and I'll work with Ken on that, just officially make a request to the Jacksonville district to set up a public meeting for the community, and that then we will also ask at his convenience the Green Flash, an owner of Green Flash, to come before the panel and just make a presentation and answer any questions that the panel or the community that goes to panel meetings would have.
I'm not sure if you can have a vote, David, because this wasn't noticed in the agenda.
Okay. All right.
It was because we didn't find out about it until Monday, so we couldn't put it in I mean, you can get a consensus of the panel to say you want to invite Green Flash, but I don't know that a motion is allowed because you didn't notice it.
Okay. Okay. So what about sending a request under the fact that we have only until July 31st to the Jacksonville district requesting a public hearing?
I think the panel can agree to waive that notice because of the deadline. We've allowed that in the bylaws.
Okay. Okay. So the motion would be to informally let Green Flash know that we'd love to have them come before the panel to explain their application and answer any questions. But we also we need approval, and I make this motion that the panel submit to the Jacksonville district a request for a public hearing and to the district engineer to be held on Captiva. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second.
Okay, all those, any discussion, further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Ken, I'll work with you on that request to the. Okay. Any other comments from panel members on any issue that we didn't discuss or issues that we did discuss? Nothing? Okay. Anything further from the community?
Not really. There was one mentioned by somebody that they will also be at the HEX hearing. So it looks like it will be a large Captiva contingent.
You're talking about the iguana hex hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
No, the turtles.
Oh,
The code enforcement.
I meant the turtles. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So much wildlife so little time.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Anything else, fellas, guys, girls, women, men? No? Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion adjourned. Thank you very much for attending, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Okay, take care.
Thanks, Dave.
Bye.